Thanks everyone for joining us on KRTD chat. I know we're not doing these as consistently as usual, but doesn't matter. Anyway, so we're here with Sabby Sabs today from the Hampton Leftist Network. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me, Shane.
Sure. So the last time we saw you was at the panel talking about post strategies, Medicare for all, March. And one of the things I asked you about at that panel, we talked a little bit about your Massachusetts politics a little bit on that panel. I want to expand a little bit more on that today. So you have two senators who are allegedly some of the most progressive in the country, although one of them hasn't done anything progressive in 6.5 years since the CFPB, and has been riding the coattails of her only accomplishment for 6 years. So I want to see, what do you think about your senators, really? First off.
Oh boy, where do I begin? So Elizabeth Warren, I would say, she says that she's progressive, and a lot of people believe it, they buy into it. She knows what she's doing in a sense that she knows what issues to push and she knows what actions to participate in at the right time. So for example, right before the 2020 presidential election, there were workers here on strike. Stop and Shop employees, which is a supermarket here, were on strike. Well, that was also an election year. So it made sense that she would participate in that. So she was all on the news, the local media, everyone saw her out there with those that are striking as well, supporting them, speaking to media. But when it's not an election year, you don't really see or hear from her much. And I think that's what a lot of people may not realize. Every time she's up for election, whether it's for president, whether it's for Senate, you will see her participate more. You will see her at direct action and strikes, those types of events. But then she kind of fades away a bit. The way she was able to win here as senator, the first time she ran against a gentleman named Scott Brown. That was actually a close race. And I believe, in my opinion, from what I saw, what pushed her over was the fact that she was really advocating for, canceling student loan debt. Even back then, that was a big thing for her. And she was for Occupy Wall Street. So a lot of younger people came out to support her. So that's what helped her beat Scott Brown. And then Scott Brown kind of faded away, like in the distance after she ran. The second time.
I said he's probably a consultant on some board somewhere now.
Right. I haven't heard about him for a long time. And then when she was up for re-election, she ran against a guy named Deal. He was a Trump supporter. Obviously, Trump was not favorable at that time. So again, like, the person who she was running against was just, the support just really wasn't there. So she was going to win. She could have just shown up and she still would have won. That's the thing I want people to understand. So it's not so much that people here really believe that she's this super progressive person. I don't believe that way. I know other people that don't believe that. But when you look at the people that she's running against, she's the more progressive candidate. And that's how she's able to win. She's able to win strongly in places like Boston, Cambridge. She used to work at Harvard. So if you can pull the numbers in the cities in Boston and Cambridge, and maybe some of Worcester, you pretty much have the state of Massachusetts.
Makes sense. So in a lot of ways, I actually prefer Professor Warren to Senator Warren. I don't know about, she's the one who did the CFPB, and it seems this, after year 2 of being in the Senate, I can't be bothered to fight anymore. I just got to ride off the coattails of my old accomplishments and, all kinds of things like that. But
Yep.
Has she done anything important since in the last year or two, or anything useful in the last year or two?
No, like, we've contacted her office multiple times for direct action events, especially for the Marches for Medicare for All. She was contacted. Ed Markey's office was contacted. Ayanna Presley's office was contacted. So what we noticed is that once they were elected, all of these local events that they were participating in before they won, all of a sudden they either didn't have time to do it or they would ignore it.
Well, would you agree with this statement? In theory, she believes in the right things, but in reality, she's not willing to fight for them unless it's convenient for her.
Right. And one thing we have to remember is that Elizabeth Warren did say when she was running for president that she is a capitalist. And that's important for people to remember. She's not, yeah, she said she supported Medicare for all. Then she kind of backpedaled on that, started to change her languaging around on that. She'll say that, yes, she believes that everyone should have, parental and maternal like rights in this country. Everyone should have like free, kindergarten, free pre-K, but she still says that she is a capitalist. And so that's really important for people to remember. She really, it's hard to get up there on front of the stage and say that you are for those things, but at the same time, you're a capitalist and you're not against billionaires per se. That is a problem because capitalism is the reason why we are in this position in this country to begin with. So if you want to have more of those social like programs, you're going to have to either tax wealthy people, which are the billionaires, or the corporations are going to have to pay for it. But she's not grassroots. So she's still funded by corporations. So how is that going to work?
Well, I think she's kind of always seen herself as part of the establishment, whether progressive or not. And she believes that she can make changes by making friends with everybody. And eventually something will happen.
Yeah, it doesn't work out that way. I wish that someone would primary challenge her in Massachusetts. I think it's time. I think it needs to be, not a Republican to challenge her because they're just not going to win here. They're just not going to win. I think it needs to be someone who is a grassroots candidate, someone who is local. They need to be from here. And I say this because people who are from Massachusetts hold a lot of weight here. That's like a big thing. I've lived here for 10 years and people still would not consider me to be local per se. So being from here holds a lot of weight. So if someone that was from this state, honestly, even like Ayanna Pressley, it needs to be someone who has been here long enough. They know the struggles. They've lived in those communities that have struggled. And it needs to be someone who has a big name.
So what about Ed Markey? What are your thoughts on Ed Markey?
Ed Markey's interesting. I met Ed Markey, not on purpose. I was at an event for Thanksgiving. This was about, oh my God, was this 2 years ago? It was before COVID, I know that. And my husband and I were volunteering at a school in Malden. It was for Thanksgiving. We were serving food to homeless people and people in need, like in the area. And Ed Markey showed up. Didn't know he was coming. And I think that kind of said something to me, the fact that he was still coming back to Malden, which is where he's from, and helping the community and helping give back. Now, I don't know how often he comes back to Malden, but that did kind of say something to me that he was there and he was present for that. He's interesting though, because Ed Markey, I think he does just enough when it comes to like progressive issues for younger people still to want to come out and support him. So when he ran against, Joseph Kennedy, which I thought Kennedy running against him was a disaster, there was no reason he was running other than the fact that he was a Kennedy, just being honest. And so I saw those debates. It was terrible. It was terrible for Joseph Kennedy. So I said, in my heart of hearts, I think that Ed Markey is still going to win again. But again, it was the younger people that came out and heavily supported Ed Markey over Joe Kennedy. And I think Joe Kennedy was shocked by that because he was the younger candidate. But younger people were more aligned with Ed Markey's issues. So he had supported a Green New Deal. He was very vocal about climate change. So those are things that younger people care a lot about. And I think with Ed Markey, joining AOC a couple years back for the Green New Deal, I think that really gives him a lot of progressive credit. Now, I don't care much for AOC now, but I think he has agreed on the right progressive issues that really bring young people to come out and vote for him. And I think that's where that's how he continues to do so well, I think.
Let me ask you a question. If Elizabeth Warren had continued on the path she had continued when she had initially got into office, do you think she would also have the same success with the younger people if she had continued to fight for things like Glass-Steagall like, 'cause it seems like she was willing to cross party lines in her first few years in the Senate and work with McCain on that, and then she kind of gave up, and that issue faded into the darkness. If she continued to do things like that, do you think she would have the same kinds of popularity? And of course, if she didn't call Bernie a sexist, do you think she'd have the same kinds of popularity that Ed Markey does with the younger people?
I think she would be more popular.
Okay.
Because that's the thing with her, is that she started to lose people, I believe, during the debates when she started to accuse, like you said, Bernie Sanders of being sexist or saying that a woman can never be president. I think a lot of people saw through that because her numbers decreased like after that. And so we just saw it as like a desperate attempt. And we don't like that. So I think if she would have continued on her original path, I think, yes, she would have a lot more support from younger people today.
The last thing on Warren, now this is never going to happen with our current set. If a vote for Medicare for all came up and she voted no, and a progressive primaried her, do you think she would lose?
Oh, she would be done.
So if a vote for Medicare for all comes up, she absolutely has to vote for it no matter what.
Yes, because there are, so myself and Kyle Davis, he was the organizer for the Medicare for All March.
Okay.
Those of us that were involved in that march, we still talk to each other, still trying to do other actions for Medicare for All in the state in Massachusetts. So we've already contacted multiple, like, House reps about this, and most of them have agreed and said, yes, I think, we should bring this to a vote. And so this is becoming more and more of an issue. And if we keep screaming about it like loud enough, I think for Elizabeth Warren to come back and say, no, she's against that, I think that is really going to hurt her, especially considering what people have gone through in Massachusetts since the pandemic. People can't afford to pay their hospital bills. People getting like thousands of dollars from the ER, from emergency rooms, and they just can't afford it. Whether you have health insurance or not, health insurance is still not covering everything. So I think that's something that a lot of people here are starting to see, and it's expensive to live here. So I think if she goes against that, I think that would significantly hurt her. But again, the person running against her, it needs to be someone that's well known. It needs to be someone that is, I think, local, that is from the area, that the people really know. I think that is going to help them a lot.
Definitely. Now, I want to ask about two more Massachusetts politicians. So I want to ask you about Ayanna Pressley. So she's the most known progressive, so-called somewhat progressive congresswoman from your state. What do you think about her?
It's interesting. Ayanna Pressley was city councilor here before she was congresswoman. And I heard of her then, like before she ran for Congress, because of some of the things that she was able to get done in the city. So one of the things that she did was she was the one that really implemented the push for expanding liquor licenses in Boston to bars and restaurants. Why is that important? That's important because in her district, a lot of the Black lounges and bars and restaurants did not have that license that they needed to be able to stay open later, to be able to serve like alcohol after a certain amount of time, like during the day. And that affects your business. That affects whether or not customers are going to stay longer or if they're even going to come to your business. So Massachusetts had already said, we are not giving out any more licenses. And she pushed and she fought for that and was able to get more licenses implemented to the Black community for Black bars, restaurants here in the Boston area. So I've seen her push for things and fight for things. Something happened though when she went into Congress, because if you notice, when people talk about the squad, most of the time the attention is not on her. Most of the time it's on AOC. It may be on Cori Bush, Rashida Tlaib. Ayanna Pressley, for whatever reason, is kind of in the background. Like she's still a part of the squad, but you don't really hear them talk about her as much. I'm not sure how much Nancy Pelosi has to do with that. I'm not sure how much it is that maybe Ayanna Pressley doesn't want to be seen as like this iconic figure. She kind of, I think, falls back a little bit from the spotlight. And that is something that I have noticed. In reference to the way that she votes, I am proud of her for voting against the, increasing the Capitol Police bill. Let's remember AOC voted present. So I am happy for her, doing that. But again, that's something that's important to her district. So when Cori Bush tells us that, they vote for their district, I think we should pay close attention to that. So even though we call them the squad, at the end of the day, they're going to vote for the things that is important to the people in their district. So I will give her, applause for that. But that being said, I think being a part of the squad today is problematic, no matter what you do now, because so many people have been disappointed and let down by the way that they voted, by the actions that they've implemented, and how they choose to be silent on issues that they should be louder on. So I think even now, if Ayanna Pressley, let's say she were to challenge like Nancy Pelosi or someone, I think just being associated with the squad is doing people harm. It's doing individuals harm who may not want to be in that spotlight and just want to do their job.
Now, one of the things, she was a Justice Democrat, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Yep.
So one of the things that even Kyle, that was started by Kyle Kulinski, Cenk Uygur, and two people that no one's ever heard of. But the other, I'm sorry, I don't remember their names. No offense to them. I'm sure they're fine. But the one thing Kyle recently said in the last 4 months about the Justice Democrats is we did not vet these people for leadership. He said we did not vet them for leadership. He said that's one of the mistakes that I regret while he was there. That he said they did not vet these people for leadership. They just vetted them on policy, which at the time seemed like the right thing to do. But now we're seeing that because they weren't vetted for leadership, a lot of them are not capable of leadership. There's not one of them there is capable of making these decisions and leading them into these battles.
Yeah, well, Kyle goes back and forth though on the squad. Like he walks in the middle. Like he'll criticize them just enough to seem like left enough, but then he'll defend them just enough to still gain that Vosh and that Humanist Report crowd. So when he says things, I'm just like, whatever, dude, you're just giving talking points so that you can stay in the middle. True. So you keep both sides.
No, but he wasn't referring to the squad in that instance. He was referring to the creation of the Justice Democrats in that instance. But I agree with what you're saying.
Yeah, but Justice Democrats, and that it's coming out now that they have dark money.
Oh yeah.
So well, it just,
they're a failed organization.
The organization, I think, as a whole, it didn't do what it was supposed to do, right? And that's okay. Sometimes these things happen. Sometimes when you start new organizations, sometimes it works out great, sometimes it doesn't. That's the risk with starting something new.
Well, here's the thing. I want to get your opinion on this. What I noticed about Justice Democrats, when it was starting up, it looked really interesting. You have Kyle and Cenk, and they're starting this new organization, and they got all these interesting people working with them. But then Cenk leaves. He doesn't hold strong when his own people force him out. Kyle resigns with him, and then you get all these new people who show up. A lot of the people who showed up, nobody knows who these people are. They're not known in the progressive left. There's these random people, and now you got Alexandra Rojas, who has her CNN contract. Like when they left, they didn't make sure that the right people would take over that organization. They kind of abandoned it.
Well, but why did they leave? Did they leave on their own, or were they asked to step out because of things that came out against them?
Well, the thing with Cenk was, and Jimmy defended him on this when it happened, he said, you never should have left. They found something that he wrote 10 years ago, and they said, hey, we don't like that you wrote this. And a lot of the volunteers said, we're gonna leave if you leave. And Jimmy Dore said, you shouldn't leave. You should hold strong, and you should stay there. And he didn't do it. And then Kyle resigned in solidarity with him. And that organization kind of went downhill after. Well, even after, but.
I heard some things came out against Kyle too. And that's why he also, yeah.
But the way he framed it, but even still, they kind of created an organization and left it to rot.
But that's what happens sometimes when people leave on bad terms. See, it's different. Like if they would have left on good terms, they probably would have made sure all the loose ends were tied up before they left.
Yeah.
And this is like with any job too, right? So like if you leave on bad terms though, do you really feel obligated to tie up those loose ends? No, you may not. You may
No.
just want to just cut ties and just walk away. So it's unfortunate that all that happened, but after that happened, AOC and Ayanna Pressley, other Justice Democrats, they were still coming on to those shows. They were coming on to TYT. I think Jimmy Dore was the first one that had AOC on. So they were still coming on their shows. And it's, I say it this way. When you remove yourself from an organization, I think you should be fully removed. And I say that because if you keep coming back and you say, yeah, I started this organization and we did this, and you say all these great things about the organization when the organization is doing well, but then when the organization is not doing well, and then people come back and they criticize you, then you can't come back and say, oh, but I'm not a part of that organization. So I think it needs to be one or the other. If you're going to remove yourself, then fully remove yourself from the organization. I think Justice Democrats, I think it started out as a good idea. Hey, let's get like progressives to run grassroots campaigns and get them to come into the Democratic Party and try to change things. And I think it was supposed to be a hostile takeover, something like that is how it was worded.
And we're going to grab it or something.
Yeah. I mean, it sounded like in theory, it sounds like a good idea, but in practice, it's like, you would have to have the majority of the politicians in Congress would have to be Justice Democrats in order for that to work. And I think a lot of us see that now. I think some of us don't want to admit that now, but it's just the reality. You have to have the numbers. If you don't have the numbers, look, we just saw this happen the other day with AOC and Nancy Pelosi. AOC goes back and she changes her vote to present because Nancy Pelosi whispered something in her ear, and then she has this whole let me pretend to cry meltdown face. I mean, it's just, This is the reality.
The original idea of the Justice Democrats, they were going to be the Tea Party of the left. And the other thing that they did not follow through on at all was they were going to have their own caucus. They were not supposed to join the CPC. They were supposed to create a Justice Democrats caucus. And they were supposed to be a separate entity a separate caucus within the Democratic Party, who was supposed to vote as a bloc as much as possible, and they just didn't do that.
Well, part of the issue is they have no threat of third party. There's no, when they say Justice Democrats are supposed to be a Tea Party of the left, the Tea Party had the Tea Party. They had something that they could actually get people elected to under. Yep. Right?
Well, one of the original names was going to be Left Tea Party. They should have gone with that name, maybe.
I'm interested to see what you think, Sabs, about how do we can get, we've shown that we can get, quote unquote progressives elected based off their policy. How do you think we keep them with that policy? How do you think we keep them from being influenced by, the powers that be, so to speak, right? That's what I would like to know, what you think we should do there, because...
And do you think we even can?
Yeah.
As long as they go into one of the two parties, you can't. And the reason why I say that is because of the powers that be. If you don't have Nancy Pelosi, if it's not her, it's going to be someone else. If it's not Joe Manchin, it's going to be someone else. DC itself is corporate. It's run by corporations. This is why I tell people all the time, the government doesn't run the country. Corporations run the country because they run the government. They run the politicians. So as long as you have corporate money in politics, this is always going to be an issue. And this is why we see even someone like Bernie Sanders, who told us to fight against this. Even now, Bernie is going on to talk shows and he's saying Biden's doing such a great job. Now he sounds just like the rest of them.
Well,
Joe Biden's my friend.
I'm not sure. I hope I don't copyright it for saying this, but have you ever seen the Star Trek, the Star Wars prequels movies? Have you ever seen those before? I got a point I'm going to get to. So,
I've seen all the Star Wars movies.
Okay, so there's the one that shows how the Galactic Republic kind of functioned, how they had a Senate. Now in the Senate, they have representation from all the major corporations in the Republic. They have their own senators. I think we're headed that way, where you have the senator from Amazon and the senator from eBay and the senator from Walmart in the Senate.
Yep. I mean, this is what is going on. So until that changes, this is why I tell people we really need a strong third party. We need someone to challenge them. And like I said, they may not win, but they can shake them up enough and pull enough support from the Democratic Party to maybe wake them up and say, hey, like, this is a serious threat to us. Maybe we do need to change some of the things that we are doing. Not saying that they will necessarily do that, but you have to start somewhere. I just don't think, I think some of these politicians, they go in, they have really good intentions, but then they get there and they realize, if I want to be reelected, if I want to get this committee seat, if I want to be a career politician, I better listen to Nancy Pelosi. I better listen to Chuck Schumer. I better do what Joe Manchin says. And it doesn't matter who you put else, who the other person is that you put in that spot. This is really important for people to understand. The system itself is corrupt. So if you can't change the system, then it doesn't matter who you put in. They're all going to operate the same. Listen, no one is holding a gun to your head and telling you have to vote a certain way. But there are obviously things that are being said to them that is influencing them to vote against what they normally said they would vote for. They've done nothing. Jamal Bowman he's voting exactly the same way that Elliot Engel would have voted. So what was the point?
Don't forget, he was so excited to get Barack Obama's endorsement. That was a big thing for him. Like, oh my God, I got his endorsement. Okay.
Yep.
That shows how what kind of politician you are.
I think they want this for a career. And if you want it for a career, you have to play the game.
You have to play the game. Now, one of the other things, I'm losing my train of thought here, to look at is everybody acts like that the first time that somebody has let us down is AOC. It's really not. There's big hopes every time. If you look back, Elizabeth Warren brought big hopes when she became a senator and then let everybody down.
Yep.
And it's the same movie. It's just a different it's just a different star.
Yep. Every time. I know for me, my first letdown was Barack Obama. I mean, when he was running for president, he was saying some of the same things that Bernie Sanders says. Yep. Some of the same things. He wanted everyone to have health care too. So, and then he won and he got in office, and then I saw that he was just like all the other people that came before him. So he was a big disappointment to me. And even when he won second term, I was just like, how is this even happening? Like,
he said, I'm a moderate Republican from the 1980s.
Basically, like, it just, you can't make these things up. And so for me, the first person was Obama. And then after that, even with Bernie, I'm disappointed with Bernie. I'm disappointed that Bernie isn't still fighting as hard as he was when he was on the campaign trail. But again, there's no election attached to it.
There isn't. And the other thing a lot of people don't know about Bernie is the actual way he's a little bit of his origin. He got into office. First, he was the mayor of Burlington.
Yep.
And the city council started blocking his legislation, and they created the Vermont Progressive Party. And the Vermont Progressive Party literally hijacked that city council, and in his second term allowed him to start passing the legislation he wanted to pass. And right now they even have a lieutenant governor. That third party was able to go out of control. The Democrats couldn't run a candidate for governor in Vermont. They had to endorse the Vermont Progressive Party candidate because that third party got so powerful and so out of hand in Vermont, they can't control it. You have to be a progressive Democrat to win an election there. B, a member of the Vermont Progressive Party. C, maybe a populist Republican, depending on the district. But you cannot be a conservative or a moderate, really, in Vermont and win an election.
Right. There are some, I do know there are some Trump supporters in Vermont, but there also isn't as many people in Vermont. There's not a lot of people in Vermont. So someone like, yeah. Oh yeah, it was definitely gonna be easier.
But one of the big things that we've had, I'm not sure if you paid any attention to Maine. Maine just did their Senate election, and there was an independent running under the banner of the Green Party named Lisa Savage. She got into 3 of the debates in Maine, and mid-election, they changed the rules to stop her from getting into the last few debates because she was challenging the system. She was going to win. She was very possibly going to win that election, and they couldn't have that.
And none of this surprises me. Listen, like during the Democratic primaries, they were talking about changing the rules for how many delegates you had. Remember they asked him that question on the stage and everybody else was like, or Bernie was the only one that said, yes, the person that has the most delegates should be the one that's the nominee. Everybody else said no. All of a sudden this was like a no. And I'm like, no, that's the way they've been doing it before. And they said that because at that time, Bernie was in the lead. So it just goes to show you, like, they're always trying to like change these rules. They've made it more difficult for candidates to get on the debate stage. This is why there were like 22 Democrats that were running at one time. You never saw like 10 of them. You didn't even see them. So they make it more difficult for you. And that's unfortunate. But at the same time, also, you have to ask yourself, why were there so many people running to begin with? I think part of that was because a lot of people are like, we want Trump out. He just has to go. But I think another part of it was, I think some of those people wanted to stop Bernie.
Definitely. Now, Bernie does not know how to play the game to his own advantage. He could have made deals with any number of those candidates for positions or for whatever and gotten them out of the race very quickly. He does not know how to play the game. If he offered Elizabeth Warren Treasury Secretary or VP, whatever he was comfortable offering her, she would have dropped in a minute.
Yeah, well, I mean, Bernie was too nice. Like oftentimes he called Joe Biden he's like my good friend Joe. He didn't take the gloves off. And you have to do that, especially when you have that many candidates running. So I felt like he was too nice. There were other times I felt like he should have talked about what the DNC did to him, how what Hillary Clinton was saying about him was wrong. He should have defended himself more. He should have talked more about how the media was smearing him. But I think, again, he was trying to be nice so he could still come on to The View and come on CNN. And at the same time, they were smearing him right to his face.
At that point, there wasn't this divide in independent media that there was. So Bernie Sanders had Jimmy Dore, he had TYT, he had Sam Cedar, he had every single lefty, center left, progressive left podcast and show on the internet he could go on and fundraise if he really needed to. He did not have to rely on.
Then he put, like Bree under the bus. Like,
yep.
Like, how do you, the lady who's been doing like the most outreach for you're like, yeah, no, we don't believe what she said. What do you?
Yep.
It makes no sense to me. Like,
it doesn't.
And I
go ahead.
And I hate to say it, but especially after talking to like my relatives, like Black boomers in the South don't watch those shows. Yeah. They're not watching left independent media. They're watching CNN and MSNBC. So you have to get the narrative across on those networks. And oftentimes when Bernie went onto those channels, I felt like he let them overtalk him. He let them smear him to his face, and he should have defended himself more. So that was like the frustration I think I had with Bernie. I felt like he did not take the gloves off, and you would see people like his good friend Joe who would sit up there and lie about how much Medicare for all would cost this country. And I just felt like Bernie, he should have been more aggressive, in my opinion.
What about the Trump strategy? Trump did this interesting thing where he would call into Fox and Friends in the morning. What if Bernie Sanders called in? I know it sounds crazy, but what if Bernie Sanders called into Fox and Friends to talk to him? I'm sure they'd take his call.
They would definitely take his call, because he's not, like, it's one of those things, like, again, when he went on to Fox News, he had a town hall on Fox News. I remember a lot of people weren't happy about that. They're like, he's going to speak to the other side. And I'm like, no, you need to talk to everybody, as many people as possible, not just people in your circle, not just people on the left. I thought it was good that he went on to Fox News to tell people about his policy so he can get across to a conservative base. I thought that actually made a lot of sense. Then when Pete Buttigieg did it after him, all of a sudden it was okay.
Well, what about Jeff Weaver wasn't going to let him do that anymore. Jeff Weaver couldn't let Bernie actually do something good, and then he goes on to go work with Nina, and what happens with that? Now she's on. How do they not see these optics? What you're going to go on? How do you do the superhero picture after you lose? You lost. How are you a superhero when you lost to who?
Here's the thing that they had actually said on that. I wasn't surprised with what happened with Nina. They said on TYT years ago, if AOC had lost, there was a job waiting for her there.
There you go.
They have no problem hiring these people. But here's the thing: TYT has slowly rotted itself from the inside. They had, within the last 4 years, they slowly, I'm going to give them credit. They slowly became MSNBC light. They didn't do it overnight. It was impossible to see until Force the Vote happened. And then not even until until Fight for 15 happened even. Because I would say, a lot of people stay with them. Okay, what are they going to do with this Fight for 15? Okay. They just gave up on that, and then they lied to their audience. Okay. Then I think that their progressive audience left in two waves. Their progressive audience left after Force the Vote, and they left after Fight for 15. I personally stayed for Fight for 15 because I have no problem with direct actions. I'm like, okay, let me see what they do with this. And they completely botched that too.
Yep. But they don't really care because at the end of the day, once Trump lost, and I had a feeling this was going to happen, and Biden won, all the money moved to the center. It's not on the left anymore. It's not so much on the right anymore. So people who started doing this before Trump, people who started doing this when Bernie ran 2016, when Bernie ran again, that they had a little bit of a, I guess you would say a good start, because they were starting during a time when people were craving this information, right? They wanted to hear more about Bernie Sanders and what he was talking about, and they weren't really getting a lot of that on mainstream media. But once that was done, and once Trump lost and Biden won, the money shifted to the center. And this is why you will see TYT make these excuses for the squad. You will see them praise Joe Biden because they know, and Jeffrey Katzenberg knows too, who gave them that $20 million. They know that this is where the money is at. And it'll be interesting to see if come next election, another bold progressive candidate runs. It'll be interesting to see if they switch back to that.
I don't think they can at this point. And here's the other thing. If you look at them during the Obama, before they took any money, the thing is, the money is what screwed them. They never should have accepted a single investment from any of these corporate corrupt billionaires because they dealt themselves out of the game when they did that. It wasn't us canceling them. It wasn't us stealing them out of the game. It was them dealing themselves out of the game. It was them destroying themselves. We didn't do it to them. They did it to themselves.
I'm still waiting on my refund for, paying for journalists that are not there. So,
But look at 2008. This is before they had corporate money. In 2008, they attacked Obama, threatened his entire term.
Yep.
They can't do that anymore because Jeffrey Katzenberg wouldn't appreciate them going to attack Joe Biden for his entire term. They're not allowed.
I'm interested to see what, with this election coming up soon, I'm interested to see what you think people can do as individuals. Because from my perspective, I look at electoral politics as a whole, and I don't see who we voted for doing much, right? And I think you're with me on that. I think we're looking at direct action and mutual aid as far as the actions that individuals can take to try to influence our world in a positive manner. I'm interested to see what you think we should also be doing on top of that, or if anything. But
we're going to have to do a general strike. So that's something that is in the works for October 15th. And I don't think that one alone is going to be enough. I think we are going to need multiple general strikes to happen in this country in order for this to be successful. And I say this because at this point, we have seen time and time again, the politicians are not going to help us. They are not going to do it for us to get these things done. So we need to go after the corporations. Now, how do we do that? We do that through a general strike. I totally understand that most of us cannot afford to walk off our jobs. For a lot of us, our health insurance is tied to our employer. So some people have to stay because of that. But what a lot of us can do is stop supporting these corporations. We can stop supporting Amazon, stop buying things from Walmart. Those are the big two that I think would be affected the most. Listen, we already saw Chris Smalls when he came on. He was telling me about how he went to every one of Jeff Bezos' homes. This guy has multiple homes. So you really have to hit them in the pocket, because if this continues to go on unchecked, who else is Amazon going to own? They already have taken over part of like Whole Foods. It's just, it's ridiculous. And
watch them buy eBay next week. Watch them buy eBay next week.
There you go. Like this is getting ridiculous. So I think we have to fight back in a consumer way, because that's something that we can do. It's legal. I mean, you just withhold your money.
Yep.
And you don't run a risk of that. And people say, well, what am I going to do if I don't shop there? I hate to say it, but maybe go back to doing things the way we used to do it before there was Amazon.
Yeah, you can go to the store. Or
yeah,
you
go to the store.
Yep.
You can buy from a direct person too.
Or yeah.
Yep.
When you're shopping on Amazon, look for the seller. Go find their actual website. Buy the stuff there.
Yep.
Right? You know, there's constant stuff like that.
Me
and Indy covered a story about yesterday about how solidarity strikes are illegal in the United States, where in Norway, the whole reason why McDonald's has $22 an hour is because, you know, when the McDonald's workers started striking because they weren't following union rules, the rest of the unions decided, all right, truckers, we're not going to bring you goods. We're not going to bring any of the, you know, we're going to make sure roads are difficult for you. We're going to, you know, and a bunch of these other unions decided to have these solidarity strikes with, you know, the McDonald's workers, so that, you know, but that's illegal here in the United States. You're not allowed to do that, just FYI. But, you know, I think getting outside the box on some of these direct actions and stuff like that are really effective. And there's actions that individuals can take to enact change, you know. When all it takes is a young lady climbing up a flagpole to do something,
Yep.
you know, we can get a lot done. People will stick up for you if you're doing the right thing. So, I think we're just about running out of. You got one? You got time for one more, I think.
So I wanted to ask you. So this is something that actually Indy Left. I'm sure you're familiar with Indy Left. Indy Left and discussed on his interview on Joe Firestone's In Depth show. I'm not sure if you saw that interview. But one of the things they discussed was, how do you fund a general strike? And the idea they came up with was actually really fascinating. It was, what if you create an organization with a board of very trusted individuals that raises money from as many Americans as you can, a few dollars a month here and there, and you use that money in order to fund the general strike? That's basically what their idea was. I want to see what you think about that.
That's a really good idea. That's a really good one, because one of the criticisms I had for the October one is the fact that, unfortunately, like, we don't have enough mutual aid like saved up for this to really hit things on the head like it needs to. So I wish we would have thought about this last year, and we could have started saving money for mutual aid last year to prepare for the October 15th general strike. So of course we can't go back in time and change time, but that's actually a really good idea. And listen, people will do it, you guys. I see GoFundMe's all the time for people saying, can you please donate because I have to have surgery? Can you please donate to help me get my car fixed? So the American people are really suffering. And we can't just sit here and listen to people like Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and making everyone like think like things are so much better and we're back on track. We're not back on track. It's still problematic for people in this country, and a lot of people are still living paycheck to paycheck. So I think general strike is 100% the way to go.
Definitely. Now, the last thing, sorry, I want to ask you is, you had your podcast prior to FHL. What made you start your podcast? How long have you been doing that? And when did you join up with it, Hampton Left, and what made you do that? That's the last thing.
Absolutely. I was already on YouTube. I used to do vlogs back in the day. You might still see some of those old ones like on my channel. It's really funny looking back at those now. But I decided to start my podcast because I wanted to offer a different perspective in left independent media. I noticed there weren't as many women. I noticed there weren't as many African Americans. And I felt like it would be good to hear a different voice. So I've been doing that since January. God, it seems like it's been a lot longer than that, but I've been doing that since January. And I joined FHL. It was before July 4th. I remember, because we did a 12-hour stream July 4th. So it was before that. And they reached out to me. I remember it was Rome and Jackie and RJ contacted me and asked me if I would be interested in joining. So I was like, absolutely, I'd love to, you know. So I've been doing both, and I've been learning a lot, and they're a great group. And FHL is just I think we're going strong, and I think people are going to be interested to see like where we take our network.
Absolutely. And where can people find you in particular if you want to, you know, your socials and all that?
Absolutely. You can find me on Twitter. My Twitter handle is Sabby Sabs 2. That's the number 2. And you can also find me on YouTube. My Sabby Sabs channel is there. I'm on the FHL channel as well. And you can find me on Spotify, Facebook, Instagram, but I don't use Instagram the way that I should, unfortunately. But yeah, I'm pretty much everywhere.
Definitely. All right. And if you want to drop, all right. So, and your phone number is. Everybody, if you want to drop that in the chat so everybody can call you personally.
Social security number, yeah. Mother's maiden name. All right. I think that's.
Thanks everyone for tuning in today. Bye.
Bye everyone.
Bye.
All right, you are.